Okay, perfect. Nicole, thank you for that. And again, hello everyone. My name is Lukas and I work as a pre-sales engineer at ThreatMark. And I'm going to cover this very interesting topic in this webinar, which will be approximately 1 hour long. But let me first introduce very briefly ThreatMark as a company, and I promise it will be a very brief, just this one slide. I really promise. So ThreatMark was founded in 2015 by banking security experts, and as they saw the gaps within the security and they wanted to end the game of the cat and mouse and to think of something working not only once, so let's say temporary solution, but as a description of some particular problem, but more universal tool to tackle fraud that doesn't exist now, but in the future. And it worked from the Czech Republic, that we have our HQ. ThreatMark grew to the company protecting more than 25 million customers all over the world, and it's still growing. And currently, we have more than 70 experts on board, mostly developers and researchers. And this team is fully focusing on just one solution, this AFS that I will also be talking about today. And currently, solution scores more than 1 billion logins yearly, and we have also a very good coverage from the perspective of mobile endpoint protection. Couple of recognitions and milestones are listed there as well. So just briefly, we were mentioned by Forrester as an enterprise fraud management software within the category of it. Gartner listed us as a representative vendor in its online fraud detection area in Market Guide for 2021. And we were also listed among Fast 50 growing companies by Deloitte in 2020. So yeah, that's the very short introduction. And to the actual agenda for today's webinar. First, I will cover current fraud tactics. We will deep dive into that. We will then describe their technical barriers and their imperfections. Then we will focus on contextual and behavior data analysis within the context of better authentication. And we will also deep dive into the tech support scam. um, so yeah, I would like to frame this webinar a little bit to the context of the trademark mission. And that is to find out if there is anyone acting as a legit user, and make sure that by engaging our superpowers, we can create trust between businesses and their users. And to set up a stage a little bit, I put here this diagram representing our solution. To be more specific, it's three pillars or modules, you might call them. And the solution is called Anti-Fraud Suite, AFS for short. And I highlighted the module called identity verification, as you see within the blue rectangle, because most of the features or functionalities I'm going to describe belong to this very specific module. And as you can see, trademark does also monitor transactions and detect cyber threats, but I'm not going to spend much time on that onwards. So let me show you these technique that I've mentioned before on this slide that attackers are using. I know this list is, let's say, slightly simplified. There are definitely some overlaps, but for this presentation, I believe it will work just fine. So those techniques are malware, some malicious piece of code, phishing, let's say distribution of emails containing some link which will direct the victim to the untrusted location, to some phishing site, Vishing and smishing. Phishing basically performed via voice and via SMSs. The same principles are applied there. Social engineering scams using social engineering in some form, interception of the communication and the remote access tool. Those things are heavily used. But uh, those techniques have one thing in common, and this is the fact that they are aiming to the one, let's say, ultimate goal to take over the victim's account. And Why bother? I think it's obvious. Let us these numbers scare us a little bit. One fourth of all phishing attacks are focused on the financial institutions. This is very, let's say, visual and very visible on this chart. And moving on to the next chart, it's also very visible that social engineering plays a key role in the attacks landscape. Let's say attackers are still very successful since they are having, let's say, since they use techniques of social engineering. Those are very hard to detect by any security measure. And I have highlighted those types of attack using social engineering somewhere in the process of the actual fraud. So you can see those types highlighted in again in this blue rectangles. So yeah, the question is, what banks and other companies working with sensitive data of different kinds accessible via some web interface might do? And let me show you on this breakdown. They can, for instance, do the device analysis. Basically, they can fingerprint the device to see if they have seen the device of the user before, and if that device can be trusted based on the previous sessions. They can do that. They can also try to detect malware, trying to do some malicious stuff on the user's behalf. So yeah, another, let's say, thing, another barrier that can be placed between the business and the attacker. Also, they can check the environment. For instance, they might find the answer if the user is accessing from some anonymization proxy IP, such as, for instance, exit nodes related to Tor browser, and so on. And lastly, they can implement multi-factor authentication in some form. Yeah, those barriers they can, let's say, build, but I consider those measures, let's say, necessity, uh, but definitely not enough, and I will explain why. um, those measures can be bypassed one by one by the attackers, and how, let me again explain it a little more. uh, as for fingerprint, attacker might clone the device to persuade system that it can be trusted. It can be basically cloned like one to one, mimicking the legitimate user's device. And also, the attacker might log in couple of times as a from his device to gain a trust of such system and perform payment after, let's say, 10 or even 20 sessions, when device will be probably considered as trusted. So it can be, yeah, it can be bypassed like that. And as for malware detection, something which is called accessibility feature, that was originally designed to help people with disabilities, uh, became a fear, uh, because this feature, when misused by an attacker or malware, the situation gets very critical. Mobile phone then became under full control of the attacker, so he or she can read or record everything on the screen, recent SMSs, draw overlays about the legitimate application, and so on. So very dangerous thing. And also, the app might be programmed in the way that it will start its fraudulent activity after some period of time. So you can install, I don't know, some torch or flashlight up. It will work like a torch. It will serve its purpose, and after a couple of weeks or days, it will start recording your every activity. It's called also Trojanization, when the app receives an update, and then it basically changes its behavior to a fraudulent one. And as for mentioned analysis of environment, the current tendency of browser vendors is not helping at all. Definitely not, because browsers are collecting less and less data about the users, which is, let's say, from the perspective of privacy, a good thing. But from the perspective of investigation, we have less data about the attackers. So yeah, harder to investigate. And of course, environment can be spoofed or faked easily, and by that I mean that you can use some VPN tunnel to change the IP. You can use some anonymization tools for that, so it can be also let's say tricked. The measures on the bank side can be also tricked. And last one, the multi-factor, is a kind of a, let's say, different story. However, it's faulty too. There is a concept or attack under category of phishing, which is called multi-step or multi-stage, sometimes phishing, that within one session steals the credentials. I mean, first, and then the user is asked within the second or third step is asked for the one-time password via the same site. So the user is on the same site. First, he hands over the credentials, and then he hands over the one-time password in the same fraudulent session, let's say. Uh, in the background, this OTP is then redirected to the attacker directly, and the attacker then can enroll the legitimate, let's say, can be enrolled as a legitimate user via the banking interface, and then payments can be initiated. Yeah, and specifically for the SMS one-time passwords, when attacker can swap the SIM of the victim, that's the SIM swap situation. mm, all communication is redirected from the victim's phone to the attacker's phone, including those SMS one-time passwords. So the attacker has this another factor of authentication available as well. Um, yeah, with the context of this information presented before, none of the measures are protecting against social engineering attacks. I believe it's obvious. And since the user is, and in the future definitely will be, the weakest link still, there is no wonder that 90% of all cyber attacks are based on social engineering. And yeah, let me present that on the perfect example of that, on the technical support scam. Sometimes it's called Microsoft support scam. There are, let's say, different names for this scam, but the situation is very similar. And I will walk you through all its steps. So bear with me for a couple of next slides. Um, as a part of Reconnaissance, the attacker might buy some databases, or let's say packages, on the darknet, or even or on clearnet, containing, let's say, fulls, which means complete identity packages. And from those packages, they will gain all information they need to, let's say, properly select and target their victim. So I just pinpointed some, let's say, information that you can have when you buy those fulls, FULLZ. Um, so the next step in this, let's say, attack from the perspective of the attacker, is to spoof caller ID to trick the victim into thinking that their bank is calling them with some, let's say, pressing issues. And there are, let's say, plenty of applications available to do that. I've just put here some, let's say, 3 screenshots, just to emphasize the fact that it's, let's say, pretty easily available for everyone. And on this doodle, you can see the actual, let's say, final stage of the attack and how it goes. So first, the attacker will call the victim using spoofed phone number that he, let's say, gained from this application that I've been talking about before. And in this call, he will use some detailed information to gain trust. And this detailed information can be mother's maiden name or any other information that the attacker might obtain from these fools that he purchased on the darknet. And then some pressing issue is introduced to the victim. For instance, someone hacked your account and you need to deal with that right away, or something like that. And the attacker offers to solve this issue remotely and instantly. and then ask the victim to install some application. And since I have a connection to our security operations center, I have the statistics proving that usually they request to install either TeamViewer or Anydesk. And then after they convinced the after the attacker convinced the victim to install this application, they established a session. The attacker connects to the victim, and finally, uh, the attacker blocks the screen of the victim. I mean, basically, there is a black rectangle in the front of the victim, and in the background, the attacker initiate money transfer. And finally, attacker asks for authorization of that activity by let's say by the victim, and trusting victim will authorize the payment because, well, everything seemingly fits. So I'm talking with the bank, he knows me, he wants to help me, and everything has to be done pretty quickly. So all these factors work against the victim, and basically that's it, and the money are gone. And you see, and I believe you see that from the perspective of those detections, and those methods that I was describing before, it's impossible to detect these attacks. Therefore, ThreatMark comes with another layer of data that our solution processes, and you can see it on the screen. So we are talking about device sensor data, navigation patterns, mouse movement analysis, typing analysis, and advanced hardware analysis. And having this kind of information, there is a much better chance that the fraudulent behavior will be recognized. And let me introduce those data for you in the next slides, and I will go, let's say, one by one. First, being device sensor data. And with this data, we can analyze the data from sensors which are built in mobile devices, mobile endpoints. And those data can help to answer questions like, is the phone unlocked while there's being outgoing payment initiated? That's one of them. When it happened, was the mobile completely still during that activity? Is the battery 100% charged all the time? This is amazing feature that helps us to understand if the phone is part of some pool of mobile phones connected to the same rack of mobile phones, potentially being, let's say, misused by an attacker or attackers. And this, let's say, 3 bullet points on the bottom. This is kind of a quite new research that we are doing right now, and its purpose is to validate user based on their specific handshakes, because this is very, let's say, those handshakes, how you basically how specifically you hold your phone is very individual and different for all of us. And for that analysis, we use data from gyroscope, we use data from accelerometer, and from other sensors. Also, data coming from let's say, uh, events provided by the operating system of the mobile. So that's what we do as for the device sensor data. And another data set, I've named user navigation patterns, and it's very simple. It analyzes click streams of users. And this might potentially show, let's say, it shows specific routes that our users do within the banking app or basically any other web facing interface. So we are answering the questions like, is it typical that our user first check the mortgage history, then goes to the payment history, then goes to the settings, and then initiate a payment, or is it vice versa? So these questions we're answering, this behavior basically became part of the behavior profile of the user that we analyze. And yeah, it's like if there is any anomalous navigation, our solution will trigger an alert saying, hey, this navigation is, let's say, anomalous, this is unprecedented, we don't think that this is the user doing that, I mean the legitimate user doing that, there might be probably some imposter. Another feature, which is I would say similar from certain perspectives, is that we measure specific areas, or let's say locations, that or to which our user usually clicks to. I've tried to describe that visually on my slide. So is user clicking to the center of the button, or is the user clicking to the right upper corner, for instance? So these things we're analyzing as well. And again, as with the previous situation with these navigation patterns, we merge this data into the big chunk of data belonging to this user belonging to this behavior profile of theirs. Another let's say cool feature is that the solution also analyzes the mouse movements, and it basically understand the curvatures that the user does, the angles that he creates over when he's navigating over some elements of the web app, or within the mobile application. And this picture that I'm showing you right now is just something to have here, because it says nothing about our technology, but I needed to put something here. But at least it gives you an idea what information the browser can capture in the background totally silently. So there is nothing like special agent collecting the data, no magic technology behind that. This being, let's say, constantly captured, or let's say collected by your browser, and we can just put our hands on this data, we can collect it and analyze it. And you can see that on which data we can put our hands on. Those data might be related to which mouse button was clicked by that user, where exactly the cursor was, because we have a, let's say, location of the cursor all the time. Also, we know on which specific element within the application the user clicks on, and so on and so forth. Um, Very similar approach I've took from the perspective of keyboard, because another set of data we extract is from the keyboard, specifically your typing habits. I mean the end user typing habits. And um, this slide is again saying nothing about our technology. It only visualizes what data we can analyze, we can put our hands on. And again, you can think of the data such as what exact key was pressed, when exactly, what was the delay between previous key to which field the user typed when he typed on the keyboard, and things like that. So again, no magic technology. The browser collects the data without you doing anything. um, Moving on to the last data set that I've mentioned previously, and this is this advanced hardware analysis, as I've called it. And I would say that this is extension to a traditional fingerprint, but it goes far beyond. Uh, because with this first case, as you can see, this audio card with the audio fingerprint, we can assume a manufacturer of the sound card by sending a specific, let's say, noise to the computer. Let's say I'm simplifying that, but the way how the noise or sound is processed, you can mathematically guess what was the sound card type and potentially its manufacturer, which improves the fingerprint. And basically, the same logic can be applied to graphical cards, because based on how exactly specific objects are rendered, you can assume, based on the way how they're rendered, you can assume manufacturer and type of the GPU. So these things really helps us when there is anonymization activity on the attacker side. We can still get our hands on certain data that can be mimicked, can be spoofed, but it's way, let's say, it's more difficult to spoof this data. Okay, so wrapping up this chapter, I would say, you can see on the left side the extra layer that I have just described, all these data sets. And in reality, we take this data, combine it with another layers or with another modules that we have within our AFS, being transaction monitoring data and threat detection data. And out of it, we crunch it using machine learning and artificial intelligence, and we generate something which we called risk score that can range from 0 to 1,000. So the higher the number is, the more, let's say, riskier the current session or operation is. And then with this score, our customers uh, can work like with the traffic lights, let's say. The green, the user can go to the system without any additional authentication escalated. Only the credentials are, let's say, only the credentials are enough. Orange, the access might be postponed or reviewed, or in this case, there might be, let's say, authentication challenge escalated. So this will be the perfect example of that. And the red one, uh, the user will be stopped completely. And this is just one of the use cases. I would describe this principle as a risk-based adaptive authentication. But of course, there is, and this is one of many use cases that you can leverage our solution for. Uh, Mostly for the fact that you can ask our solution anytime before any crucial event in the app will happen. So those events, those crucial events, might be authentication of the user. This is the current, let's say, scenario that I've just described. Then you can ask us on the level of the authorization of the payment. It will work in the same way. You will ask, I mean, the solution on the bank side will automatically ask, hey, what do you think about this payment? And we will respond with the risk score. And based on this risk score, additional, let's say, decision making might happen. Another event which might be subjected of this, let's say, asking our solution, might be changing the home address within the online banking, or changing the phone number within the graphical user interface of the web banking, potentially clicking on some button that shows the PIN number for credit card, and things like that. There are countless of possibilities, countless of different, let's say, implementations. Uh, Very important fact here is that our solution responds in real time. So we are talking about, let's say, 100, 200 milliseconds. So there is basically no trade-off between the security and the user experience. Um, yeah, I wanted to just provide you with a simple sneak peek from GUI of our admin console. You can see the overall look from the console, and what information can be available in which format. And you can see that the information there is pretty granular and detailed, and can be helpful when investigating a specific case. So it provides you with the I would say forensic data. Okay, let me take one step back to our previous situation with the tech support scam. If you remember, uh, having our solution in place, we would detect that someone took over the session of the user, uh, regardless. Something that I was describing before. Regardless, the network environment is fine. regardless the device fingerprint is the same, regardless there is no malware installed on the victim session, still we know that there is an account takeover going on, because we can say that the legitimate user is not operating with the same manner as before, and that will initiate that will boost our risk score to a highest possible level, and consequently some additional authentication challenge might be escalated based on such high risk score as the situation uh, would end. Um, yeah, uh, this is just a snippet from the component that is able to detect remote access. I mean that the authenticated session is being operated by someone else. And just to describe what you can see on the screen, on the x-axis, you can see probability, and on y-axis, you can see the time. And this situation is describing the case, or covered the situation, when in 93rd second of the authenticated session, the victim basically handed over, using TeamViewer in this case, handed over to the attacker, and the attacker tried to do something. Obviously, this situation was discovered instantly. Red was detected, the high risk score was boosted, and consequently the authorization was subjected by additional review, so the fraud was stopped. What you might then expect, I'm sorry, from the admin console afterwards, you might expect a pretty granular overview of all things that can be visible, and you can see this visualization in the admin console, and you can see it on the timeline with the particular details. So yeah, you have a pretty great understanding what is happening, what happened, and you can expand details in the greater, let's say, in the bigger way. You can have more information available at one click. Um, Okay, so basically wrapping up, I believe that now it's clear why there is an extra layer of protection needed. Having detailed contextual data around the session is vital to tell legitimate users and fraudsters apart. And ThreatMark is an ideal solution to achieve that goal. Mostly in these bullets, I have it listed there for its fast implementation. We're talking about weeks, not years. Uh, quick proof of concept, which basically creates almost zero workload on the customer resources and zero impact on customer infra. In a nutshell, and again, I've tried to visualize. I simplified that. Um, in a nutshell, we need to put one line of code to the protected, let's say, interface, to the web page, that will load our JavaScript from the cloud in the AWS. We use AWS, and that's it basically. Then you have all dashboards, all features available at one click, providing you with a robust fraud prevention and detailed forensic tool, which our solution definitely is. Okay, so uh, that's it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention, and I believe now it's time for your questions. So please write them down to the chat window if you haven't done it already. So I'm
Yeah,
waiting for questions. Thanks.
thanks, Lukas, for that lovely presentation. It was really insightful and full of valuable information. Yeah, we have some questions coming in. So the first one is, how fast can we access risk scores, and is it in real time?
Yes, the risk score is available in real time. As I've mentioned, we are talking about, well, let's say a couple of 100 milliseconds. And yeah, that's it, real time. Yeah,
That's great to hear. There is someone else typing in the question now. Let's wait a bit.
no worries.
Oh, we have two coming in at the same time. So let's start first. How much data do you need for those user navigation patterns to use those?
Um, yeah, basically the information that we need to, let's say, understand the behavior of users differs based on the activity of the user within the different sessions. So sometimes it's enough to have, let's say, two. Sometimes we need 6 sessions, but yeah, in general, yeah, from 2 to 6 to 2 to 6 sessions to understand the user.
Great. Thanks. I hope that was helpful. And we have another two more coming in. So, what's your experience in terms of requesting concurrence from the clients for data privacy?
Yeah, this is definitely a pressing issue. We are dealing with our customers, let's say, all the time, but always we find out a way how we can be, let's say, compliant with all necessary regulations. Um, so what we are applying right now is the, let's say, substantial public interest uh, of having this data for not protecting the client but also the bank, which allows us not require, or the bank directly require the direct consent provided by the user. So it can be part of the terms and conditions, and the data collection can be initiated.
That's great. Please, if you require more expansion on that, please write us down. Onwards is by the experience of our customers. How well is the false positive rate for our solution?
Okay, so there is no, let's say, actual data that I can provide out of the top of my head, but in general, the false positive rate dramatically decreases as the bank have, let's say, this additional layer of contextual information provided. Because, well, before it was, let's say, very simplified in a way that some transaction analysis system will say, okay, this is an anomalous payment, raise a flag because this is, let's say, abnormal amount of money being sent outside. However, with ThreatMark, you have a complementary information giving you an understanding what was the context of this payment. I mean, was it performed from the same network? Was it performed from the same device? Behavior biometrics, was it okay during that payment? And maybe having this information being okay, there is no reason to escalate this false positive, even though that the amount of payment is being, let's say, outstanding somehow.
Yeah, exactly what I want to say. And I will expand on that. We have a tested case study on our website. You can check it out in our web papers. I will add it in the chat where our customer has noted a 90% decrease of false positive rates in comparing to our competition. Is there any other question, or we should wrap this up? Lukas, there's a question. How about clients using iPad?
Yeah, so for iPad, we are, let's say, considering the iPad as a, let's say, mobile phone or mobile device, let's say, and for that we are counting on the fact that the well, basically we have two ways how to collect the data. First, being JavaScript snippets placed within the web-based application. This I was described before within the POC context. But for mobile phones, we have the dedicated SDK library, which collects the data and sends the data to our servers for being analyzed. And when we are talking about the iPads, we are assuming that those iPads will have the mobile app installed. Our SDK will be embedded by the bank, and the SDK then will take care of the data collection, and basically we will have a different data set to be analyzed, but it works just fine and in a very similar manner like for the web channel.
Thanks for that, Lukas. Here's, I guess, an expansion on that. How does it work for websites? Do users need to install something on their device for us to work?
This is a extension to this answer. No, there is nothing that you need to install. The solution is completely agentless. The collection of the data is being, let's say, processed in the background seamlessly for the end user. And for mobile phone, the situation is similar. If the SDK is embedded within the native mobile application, the end user will just update the app, and from that moment, the app will, I mean, to be more specific, the SDK will collect the data and send it for analysis. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for that, Lukas. It was really helpful and insightful. If there are no any questions, we can wrap this up. Yep, seems like so. Thank you, Lukas, for this. Thanks everyone for joining us. I hope. Thanks for that. Uh, hope that you learned something new. We'll see you hopefully in the next instance. If you have any suggestions on the topic or challenges you want us to discuss, please write us or reach out to us via website. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye bye, and see you later. Good luck.
Perfect. Thank you for your attention. Have a beautiful day. Bye bye.